not that unusual. Oh, so you heard me play some altissimo register stuff. Altissimo just means very high. It's not as complicated as people like to make it seem. It's something that when you're playing other woodwind instruments, you do it within the first year of study, sometimes earlier than that. Flute players, bassoon players, oboe players, clarinet players. But saxophone, for some reason, is considered to be unusual and odd. It isn't really. It's just playing the harmonics. If you're a brass player, you use the technique that I use to play altissimo every day when you're playing your horn, because you're playing at least third, fourth harmonics to get the notes out that you need. All it is basically on the saxophone is playing more harmonics than just the first 2 octaves. So this is the normal, normally saxophone uses, say, this low D and that D as the only notes that you would use with that fingering. But all those other notes exist, just like they do on brass instruments. If I use a low B flat, which is sort of similar to like a closed, like a trombone or a trumpet where you don't have any holes to interrupt it. It's sort of like this. What you end up using on saxophone, playing much of the altissimo, or the first octave or so, is just the next couple of harmonics. So it's like, I'll do it on the palm keys. This is like a D. And just using those 2 harmonics, you've already gotten up to a G that's an octave and a whole step above the normal range of the tenor saxophone. So it's not all that phenomenal. It's just I came across it because I was a clarinet player. And when I first picked up the instrument, I didn't have any saxophone lessons. I didn't know what the correct fingerings were. And when I started playing it, I used like the long fingering for the middle B flat. I thought that was the right way to do it. And I didn't know. And also, in getting to the top of the fingerings, I realized that there must be higher notes than that because my clarinet went up at least another octave. So I just started experimenting until things started to happen. And it wasn't that hard. But then, within a few days, I was playing, notes that were higher than that. Just because it's not that difficult. And it's all, whole number multiples of the fundamental. So integer multiples, it's pretty straight ahead. There's a lot of possibilities. I mean, when you're making those fingerings, you have to humor them for pitch. Like, for instance, here's a B flat off of the C sharp. It's a little bit flat. If I just open this key here, it brings it up to pitch enough to be able to make it in tune. So there's like alternate fingerings you have to use here and there to adjust the pitch slightly. But alternate fingerings can be used for a lot of other things. I showed you the strange B flat fingering. But that can be used for an effect like sort of like a wah-wah or muted sound on a wah-wah mute on a trumpet. So and also you can get the multiphonics before are essentially alternate fingerings. But you can also get these weird warbles like by opening a key in the middle of the instrument and playing the regular fingering. Okay, so I'll play you another piece on the clarinet that uses some of these same things. Property of your school district. People don't, I don't know why they don't like the alto clarinet. It's kind of an awesome instrument. It's sort of between a clarinet and a bass clarinet. It's got the nice low notes, but good high notes. A lot of these things I was sort of inspired by other kinds of music. I've been listening to a lot of unaccompanied blues musicians who have the advantage of being able to sing and play at the same time, where you can't do that on the saxophone, obviously. So one of the things I try to do is like create situations where the accompaniment alternates with the improvisation. But this was inspired by some old sort of blues recordings. Let's check I'm about halfway through my time. Does anybody have any questions? Don't be shy. Questions?
You have clear notation for all of that?
Yeah. I mean, this is pencil and it's, you know, photocopy, but this one I had professionally done. I do all my own copying now, Sibelius, but these are somewhat old. Yeah?
How long did it take you to develop those techniques to a level where you could perform with them?
Well, you know, a matter of a few weeks as I learned them. I started to employ them immediately as soon as I felt a little bit confident in them. But they certainly improved with time. I mean, what I can do now with Altissimo, I couldn't do 30 years ago. I mean, that's one of the nice things about getting old. Am I be the only nice thing about it. Is that your technique improves with practice, and I practice every day, so it inevitably gets better. So, anything else? Yeah?
Okay, to date, who has been your favorite SNL host?
Favorite SNL host? Robert Mitchum. He got completely wasted between dress and hair. He was so awesome. I'm a huge Sonny Rollins fan, and I listen to a lot of different people, but maybe he was my first big inspiration in the saxophone. I listened to a lot of rhythm and blues players, King Curtis and Junior Walker, Hank Crawford, Fathead Newman, people like that. You know who those people are. Yeah, well, a lot of different people. I sort of plumbed the depths. I listened to a lot of Louis Jordan, people like that. I like Coleman Hawkins a lot. I really Coleman Hawkins. Other questions? So, yeah, those are all improvisers. Improvising is a funny thing. People seem to think it's difficult. But the weird thing about that is it's just extemporaneous musical expression. It's just like, all right, what do I want to sing now? Sing anything. It's like talking. I mean, everything is your streams of words or streams of words that were never there before, unless you're reading from a book or something. I never said these exact words previously. I'm saying them for the first time. Somehow, miraculously, I'm inventing words just as I go along. It seems to be quite easy. I mean, I guess I could make myself uncomfortable and self-conscious about it, but I seem to be able to do it without putting a whole lot of thought into it. And I think that improvising music is essentially the same thing. When you understand the language, you're able to communicate. Now, if I were a foreign speaker and I had to talk to you in English, I'd have an issue. If you wanted me to speak in French, that would be pretty difficult. But once I know the language, the words seem to flow rather freely. And the same thing is true with music. Once you understand the nuts and bolts of music, you have like intervals and articulation, all the other ingredients of music that are there. It's possible to assemble an improvisation from the bits and parts of things. Now, the more comfortable you are speaking extemporaneously, I mean, some people have a terrible time getting up and talking in front of people, and it's difficult, but as you get more comfortable, it gets a lot easier. And I think the same thing is true of improvising. But it's not all that difficult. It's nothing particularly special. It's vocabulary more than anything else. And you get the vocabulary by listening to music and being selective in your listening and learning about what you actually like to listen to the most. It's very important to be particular. Let me just ask a question up there. Most people know the answer to this, but I'll ask and you can put your hand up if you think you know. What's the most important thing about learning music? Anybody? Oh, come on. Yeah.
Listening?
Perfect. Exactly. It's listening. The listening is what will get you everywhere. Without listening, you're sort of lost. The more you listen, the more carefully you listen to things, the more you're going to be able to be a good musician. And the more music you listen to, the more specific you get in your listening, the more careful you get about listening, the better you're going to be. Original music comes from every one of us because we all have different interests. It's the difficult part, if there is a difficult part, is figuring out what exactly it is you like that makes your interests specific and different from other people's and what makes it original. I'm going to play you a couple examples of things that were sort of inspirational for me and ended up being a huge influence in terms of the way I make music, both in terms of how I write it and how I play. I'll tell you what they are as I go along.